Hey everybody, it's Brandon Scheid with Slingshot Sports, and today I'm excited to be talking with you because that means you just purchased a brand new Hoverglide foil set from Slingshot. And I'm here today to help you go through all the parts and pieces, how to assemble them correctly so that we can get you on the water enjoying the feeling of float. So first things first, let's go ahead and open up our kit. You can see the first thing, it comes in this really great soft carrying case. This is great for storage, protection, and travel for carrying your foil around anywhere you want to go. So let's open this thing up, pull out the parts and pieces, and get going on how to put this bad boy together. So you can see everything is in its own compartment, so I'm just going to start opening the compartments and setting the pieces out. First big compartment up here is my front wing. Generally, this is going to be the biggest wing in your kit. So you can see it has a really large shape. It's also going to come with a neoprene cover, and that neoprene cover is to protect it getting in and out of the water or getting it in and out of your car or your boat. So that neoprene cover is a really nice added feature. So I'm going to set that down. The next piece that comes with my kit here is my mast. My mast is the piece that connects my board to the fuselage and wings down below. This is an aluminum piece. It's super strong and it is short length, which gives you a really good learning curve on that 71 centimeter mast. Next piece in here is my shift fuselage. This fuselage has a lot of different mounting options and also allows me to move my wing into some different positions. So we want to set that piece aside. Next compartment holds the smaller of the two wings, which is called the stabilizer. It's the tail wing, and this is what balances out your kit. You can see this also comes with a neoprene sleeve to protect it when you're getting it in and out of your car or setting it up. The next compartment comes with a little bit of information that's really important. First is your quick start guide, which is going to be your directional reference and have all your specs for all your bolts and explain all the details of the foil kit. And then also you have a Foil Academy voucher that gets you into the Foil Academy program, which allows you to learn how to use these foils to the maximum potential. So definitely want to set those aside. Additionally, in that pocket is the pedestal. This pedestal is what attaches physically to the board and to the mast. So this is a really nice important piece that you need. And the final pocket contains all of the hardware required, some of the anti-seize gel and Teflon tape for longevity and durability. It includes your tailpiece shim. It includes your B position mounting hardware and the 3 tools that you're gonna need to assemble your whole kit. So I'm gonna slide all this stuff to the side, get it cleaned up on my table, and then we'll go over all the pieces and how to put them together. All right, now that I have all my parts and pieces laid out very clearly, the first step that I wanna do is go ahead and grab my pack of hardware and dump out all of the hardware and match like pieces to like pieces. There are several different sizes and styles of bolts contained in this bolt pack, so you wanna make sure you separate like with like. First, I'm gonna grab my 2 barrel head screws, M8. Then I'm gonna grab my next set of M8 screws here, which is my flatheads. They're the longest in the kit. Next, I have another set of flatheads that are slightly shorter. I have 2 M6 flatheads, and I have 1 tiny little M6 flathead. You can refer to your quick start guide for all the specific lengths, but what the easiest way to assemble this and not make mistakes is just to pair like with like and make sure that you have the right pieces for the right job. So now that I have all the bolts out, I'm gonna go ahead and protect the bolts from corrosion and from coming loose by applying some lanolin electrolysis grease as well as some Teflon tape to each of the bolt pieces. A little bit of dab on your finger just goes on each bolt, on the threads. Nothing too technical here, just applying some grease so that we don't have any corrosion occurring to our parts and pieces, especially if we're using this kit in salt water. It's not as big of a problem in fresh water as it is in salt water. So for those of you ocean users, I definitely highly recommend applying these anti-seize greases and Teflon tape to make your foil last as long as possible and make sure that when you want to take your stuff apart, it's easy to take apart and it doesn't come apart when you don't want it to. Next, I want to grab my Teflon tape and I just want to do a few full wraps around the threads in order to ensure that they lock in nice and tight and then also come undone when I want them to. So it's as simple as pulling it tight around the threads, wrapping it a few times around the bolt, and then pulling it firmly to tear it clean. Again, you only need to do about 3 rotations around the bolt to ensure that you have the proper amount and it's not gonna come undone when you put the bolt in. So now that we've had all our bolts coated in Teflon tape and lanolin electrolysis grease, we need to select the proper bolts for the proper uses. Right now we have 2 of the longest M8 flathead bolts. Those are 50 mm flathead M8s. Those are actually used to install the foil in B position. We are going to be installing the foil in A position first, so we can go ahead and set those aside with the B position hardware. What we have left then is a set of 45 mm M8 barrel-headed bolts, a set of 40 mm flathead bolts, a set of 35 M6 flathead bolts, and 1 25 mm M6 bolt. What I'd like you to do is grab the 40 mm flathead bolts. We're going to be using those for the first part to put together. So we have those 40 mm bolts. We're going to go ahead and grab our mast, and we're going to grab our pedestal. Both parts need to be put together. Now, looking down the profile of the mast, you can see that it's tapered a lot more on this side than it is on this side being more rounded and thicker, this side being sharper and thinner. The thinner, sharper side is the trailing edge of the mast, the back of the mast, and the rounded, fatter side is the leading edge or front of the mast, meaning that this mast is going to move through space in this direction. So when I go to grab this and I look at the pedestal, you can see the pedestal also features a similar geometry. It's wider at the front than it is at the back. So take a second to note the geometry and set the pedestal on top of the mast to match the geometry. The pedestal goes on the top up here by the orange logo, so that the bottom is down here at the bottom of the Slingshot logo. Now that I have the pedestal press fit into my mast, I'm gonna go ahead and take my 40 mm M8 flathead screws, and I'm gonna start to hand tighten them into the top of the pedestal. Before you tighten one completely, it's really important that you put both in and get them both started to ensure proper fit. So I've got these about as tight as I can get with my hand, and now I'm gonna grab my 5 mm Allen tool, and I'm just gonna go ahead and slowly tighten them down until they're snug, one at a time. Once they're snug, I can go back and tighten them down to the full extent of the tightness. Again, this is just to ensure proper fit and that I'm not over tightening one bolt and offsetting my bolt alignment. So now they're both snug. I'm gonna flip my wrench and I'm gonna go ahead and give it one final hard torque. Okay, so this part is now ready. The next thing I'm going to do is assemble the complete lower piece, and we're gonna mount the two together afterwards. So I'm gonna set this aside. The next part I'm gonna go ahead and assemble is mounting my front wing onto my fuselage. Now my fuselage is the piece that joins the wings to the mast, and it does have an asymmetric orientation, meaning it does need to be installed in the proper orientation with the front wing on the proper side. So take a second to look at your fuselage. On the bottom side, you should have some diagram lettering that shows A and B. You should also see some countersunk pieces into both the barrel-headed option and the flathead option. If I flip this over, you'll notice there's no printing or no countersinking on this side, which means this side is the side that goes to the mast. This is the side that is on the very bottom. So what I wanna do is I wanna take this and set it down so that I can read the lettering and look at the bottom surface of my fuselage. Once I have that identified, I'm gonna go ahead and grab my front wing. I'm gonna unzip it from its neoprene case, which I'm gonna set on the side. And I'm gonna go ahead and install my front wing on my fuselage. Now my front wing, you can see, is indexed. It has a hole. My fuselage also is that shape. So all I'm gonna do is simply slide my fuse into my wing. Now remember, my wing, this is the forward orientation of my wing. I need my mast to match that. In this case, I need the countersinks to be on the bottom side so that I can mount this up. So again, I'm gonna flip it, and I'm gonna integrate the wing onto the fuselage. Now I'm gonna flip it over again so I can see the bottom, and I'm gonna do a little bit of alignment so that I see that these holes are nice and aligned here with my front wing and my fuselage. Now what I'm gonna do is grab my 25mm M6 bolt, flathead bolt, and I'm gonna put it in the last hole on the wing. And this is gonna hold my wing in place while I do the rest of the assembly. I'm gonna use my 4mm tool, slowly tighten this down until it's snug, flip the tool on its side, firmly tighten that bolt, and now you can see my front wing is installed on my fuse and it's not gonna come off, and this is gonna help me with the rest of the assembly. I'm gonna set my wing down on the table so that I can go into the next step. Now the next step of my assembly is going to be adding my wing, my rear wing, to the kit. And in this case, because I'm using my FSurf kit or my FKite or my FWake kit, my rear stabilizer is going to mount on the top surface of my fuselage, meaning that when I look at my kit, it has a logo on the front wing to indicate the top surface. On the stabilizer, I have a similar logo that indicates the top surface of the wing. You can also identify this by which side has the countersinks. Countersinks are gonna go on the top, and the indexing portion that indexes it with the shim on the back is gonna go on the bottom. So what I'm gonna go ahead and do is I'm gonna take my shim, I'm going to index it with my wing and insert it into that little area. I'm going to take my two M6 by 30mm bolts. I'm going to push those through the holes so that I have my alignment and I can see that everything is coming through. And I'm going to go ahead and align those with the holes on my fuselage. And again, I'm just going to do a slight hand tightening to bring those bolts down and into alignment to make sure that my pieces are fitting nice and flush and are mounting correctly. And then I'm gonna grab my 4mm tool and I'm just gonna carefully, just like before, snug down each one of these bolts until they're just snug so that I can ensure proper fit before I fully tighten them down. I'm gonna go ahead and do the same here on the back. Slowly tighten this down. Now that they both feel snug, I'm gonna flip my wrench. I'm gonna give it a nice tighten there. And again, you don't need to go excessively over tight, but nice and tight until you feel everything kind of cinch down and feel nice and connected. So now I have my complete lower assembled. I have my fuselage, my front wing mounted, my rear stabilizer, and my shim mounted. And this kit is ready to be paired up with the mast for complete installation. So now that I have my full lower assembled, my wings and my fuselage, I'm gonna go ahead and mount this whole system to my mast. So I'm gonna take my mast, again, I'm looking at the chord of the mast and I want the thicker side to be the front edge of the mast. So I'm gonna go ahead and set that down. My direction of travel is now this direction. So I'm gonna go ahead and pick up my wing and I'm gonna flip it over so that it is also in the proper orientation. Now in this case, we're assembling the foil in A position. A position, bringing the mast as far forward to the front wing as possible. What that does is that provides a very neutral lift profile. Actually, for a beginner, it's gonna make this wing more forgiving and less sensitive to pitch instability, which is the #1 thing you deal with as a beginner. This kit can also be set up in the B position, which moves the mast backwards relative to the position of the front wing. The B position gives you more lift. So for someone looking for a little bit more lift out of their kit, or they want to balance their stance so their legs aren't burning asymmetrically, ideally you want both your legs to be neutral and not feel any burn one or the other. So if you're feeling some problems, you can adjust the position in the track. You can also adjust A versus B position. I think these wings work great in A position. I often don't use B position, so I would recommend for most people beginning that they start with A position and then they can work towards using their wings in B position. The one exception to that rule is the FSUP kit. That kit has a longer chord length wing and it actually is designed to be ridden primarily in B position, and we'll go over that kit shortly. So again, I'm gonna be setting this up in A position. I'm gonna look at the index hole in the wing here. I'm gonna line it up with the indexing spot on the mast. Once everything lines up, I'm gonna hold this down with one hand. I'm gonna grab my M8x40 barrel head screws, and I'm gonna go ahead and assemble those again with hand tightening. Now, a pretty common mistake that people make when assembling their Hoverglide here is they actually use the B position 23 mm barrel head bolts. These bolts are not long enough to make an adequate connection between the mast and the fuselage. So make sure you're using the 40 mm M8 barrel headed screws to connect your fuselage to your mast. I'm gonna go ahead and pick up my number 5 wrench, and I'm just gonna slowly tighten these barrel headed screws down one at a time again until they're snug, making sure that my fit looks flush. Now that they're both snug, I'm gonna go ahead and flip my wrench again, give them that last final snug tightening down. And now our Hoverglide kit is ready to go and it is assembled in A position.